Hello and welcome to a new season of Minnesota Legislative Report. I'm your host, WDSE News and Public Affairs producer Greg Grell. Well, today's show marks the start of the 42nd season of Legislative Report, and that makes this the longest-running locally produced public affairs program in our region. It's your opportunity to call in with questions about the legislative session to the lawmakers that represent you in St. Paul. Now, we have two phone numbers. Locally, you can dial 218-788-2844. If you're calling from outside the local Duluth calling area, use our toll-free number, which is 1-877-307-8762. When you call, a volunteer will write down your question and they'll bring them into me here in the studio and we'll ask them on the air. You can also send your questions to our email address, and we have a new email address this year. It's askmlr@wdse.org. The phone numbers and email address will be up for most of the program, which will be a half an hour long today, and we'll get to as many of those questions as time allows for this afternoon. Now let's introduce the legislator who's here in our studio joining us, and it's Senator Carrie Ruud, a Republican from Breezy Point, which is in the Brainerd Lakes area. And Senator Ruud, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. I had a lovely drive up. I missed a lot of the snow, so watched one of the great ships come in today into the harbor. So it was thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's great, and we really appreciate your coming in. And it's really a great opportunity for us also to introduce you for the viewers, because you were elected this fall to Senate District 10, which includes Aiken and Crow Wing counties. So you get into our viewing area, kind of in the western area of the WDSE viewing area. So talk a little bit about yourself first. You do have some prior legislative experience.
Well, I was elected the first time in '02 to '06. I served in Senate District 4, and I had, that was from Grand Rapids to Park Rapids, from Bemidji to down by Breezy Point. So it was a huge district. And then I've been out of office since '06. And with redistricting, we had a wonderful new district drawn, and it was an open seat again, all of Aiken and all of Crow Wing, which is where I live and do business. And so it was a really good opportunity for me to get back into office and serve my constituents.
Now, you talked about doing business, and you are a realtor. That's your job. So I bet you know the area pretty well.
Yeah, I do. My husband and I have a small independent real estate company. We've been in business for almost 25 years now, okay. And so we enjoy it very much, know the area quite a bit. We live right in Pelican Township in Breezy Point. Mm-hmm. I'm a former mayor of Breezy Point. Okay. A lot of folks think that Breezy Point is just a resort, but it's actually a very 17-mile square city. So we have a resort with lovely resorts within our city.
All right, now, as you mentioned, elected this fall to the Senate, so you're a freshman, I guess, in name, but have that legislative experience. How is that helping you so far during this session, having that prior legislative experience?
Well, I think we got a very clear picture this time that the constituents were tired of partisan politics. Mm-hmm. And so I have held all of my town hall meetings. I am in a district where the Senate seat is held by a Republican, myself, but I have the House seats are held by two DFL legislators, Representative Radinovich and Representative Ward, and we have done all of our town hall meetings together because I think we got the message that people are tired of the partisan politics. So we have really formed a great team for Senate District 10, and we've been working hard to work together. And we know we're not going to vote together on issues, but we're concentrating on agreeing on the things that we can agree on and getting things done for our constituency.
And I would imagine a big part of that agreement is jobs, getting jobs for the region. I mean, obviously the economy has, been through a lull, and now we're starting to see maybe a little bit of improvement. As a realtor, you might see that more if the houses are starting to sell again this spring. But is that one of the areas that you'll be able to work together with the Democrats in your Senate district?
Well, the city of Brainerd has one of the highest unemployment rates in the state of Minnesota for a city of its size, and so that's a great concern to us. And so making sure that we do a good job attracting businesses to our area. Right now we're working on a bill for our airport. We know that our airport is one of our biggest assets. It brought in some of our box stores, which have very good high-paying jobs. Because their executives can fly in and out. In the tourism industry, we have folks flying in to our airport all the time that have seasonal homes. So it's very important. So we're all working together on that project.
That sounds good. Now, Just to give people a little bit more background and a little bit more about your priorities, what are your priorities this session and moving forward as you serve out your term in the Senate? What are you going to focus on?
Well, of course, jobs. That's big. And tourism. I actually, when I was in office before, am the co-author of the Minnesota Tourism Council, and that's been just a tremendously successful council for bringing tourism dollars into the state of Minnesota. But I also am really working on education. We think that the piece that's missing in education is the high school and being ready for college, or I don't think everyone needs a 4-year degree. I think that everyone needs post-secondary education, but I think we should be really concerned with having our children ready for post-secondary and then deciding what that is to make them successful. Is it an 18-month course, technical course, or is it a 2-year degree, 4-year master's? Whatever that is, we seem to be missing that piece to have our children ready. We're concentrating a lot on the testing. So part of the piece we've been working on is bringing that ACT test into the schools and using it and its benchmarks to get our children ready for the post-secondary world, and getting rid of our children going into college and having to take remedial classes, because college education is so expensive. So we need to get rid of that piece.
So college preparatory will be a focus for you. Now, I want to remind people that you are watching Minnesota Legislative Report, and the phone numbers and email address are on your screen. It's your opportunity to call or email a question right now for Senator Ruud, and we'll get to those as time allows today. Senator, one major piece of legislation has already passed this session. It has to do with the Federal Affordable Care Act, and that was the health insurance exchanges that the governor has already signed into law. That was expedited because of the deadlines put into place by the federal government. That passed strictly on party lines, and no Republicans voted in favor of it. I just thought I'd ask you first, just doesn't it make sense that we set this up, because otherwise the federal government's going to do it for us? And what's your opinion about this legislation?
Well, you know, we were on the floor for 12 hours, and we offered 154 amendments. And we were not able to make any adjustments to it that we thought were very important for businesses and for the critical care piece to it. From my standpoint, I think we should have let the federal government do it, because we're spending millions and millions of dollars in setting up this exchange, and a lot of it we don't even have the framework for what we were supposed to do. So it's going to cost the state of Minnesota millions of dollars to do this, when you could have let the federal government do it and let them institute that process. It would have been a lot less costly, and they have the guidelines that I think they're making them up as they go, but
and it is coming fairly quickly. People will be able to use these health insurance exchanges before the end of the year, and I think there's still budget numbers that haven't been set yet for this, so there's still things to be decided.
You know, I think that we're very far from using it by the end of the year. The data practice piece is very convoluted at this point in time. I don't think we'll be ready to use it within a year.
Okay. And I'm sure we'll be talking more about that throughout this year on Minnesota Legislative Report, because a lot of people are very interested in it. Of course, the really important essential business during a legislative session is to pass a budget. And that process will be going on now, continuing, it has been going on, continuing until the end of the session. What's your feeling right now about what you've seen of the budget and how it looks for Minnesota?
Well, to be honest with you, I have not seen a budget bill yet. We haven't done any budgeting yet. I sit on 2 policy committees and 1 budget committee. And so far, we have not had any budget bills come through. What we've been doing in our jobs committee right now is looking at bonding projects that are coming through. We are told that this next week we will start looking at a budget, but so far we've not had any budget bills come through our committees.
And of course, the Democrats, being the majority party, are kind of controlling that process, so often the Republicans don't get a chance to see that until they're actually in the committee process.
That's true.
And speaking of committees, we haven't talked yet about the committees that you serve on. Let the viewers know what committees you're assigned to.
I sit on the Education Policy Committee. That's a new committee for me. I've never been on that committee before, and so it's been a tremendous learning experience for me. I'm very excited. I have over 10 districts in District 10, and so being on the policy committee, school districts, and so being on that policy committee is really important for me so that I can really help my districts be successful. I also sit on the, let's see, they rolled everything they couldn't think of another committee. We have the economic development, the rural development, jobs, telecom, well, it's all rolled into one committee, and I sit both on the policy and on the budget committee of that.
And the environment and ag.
Yeah, environment, yeah, ag. Yeah, they kind of rolled everything up into one big committee.
It's a catch-all.
And I've also serving on a new commission that starts tomorrow, and I've been elected the vice chair, and that's on the school trust lands. And we're going to be looking at those, doing an inventory of all of those, making sure that they're all being used to their best and highest use, because those are funds for our children. They were set up for our children. We want to make sure that all the funds and the monies that, you know, for our schools are being used correctly. So I'm really excited to start that committee tomorrow.
And that's a big issue in northeastern Minnesota and northern Minnesota. There's a lot of those forest lands that are set aside that can earn money for the schools.
Thousands of acres, thousands of acres.
Well, we look forward to seeing how that committee, or that commission does, and maybe we'll have time to talk about that again later.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
We are getting some questions now from viewers, and we've got a call from Keith in Duluth and Senator Ruud. Keith is wondering, how do you feel about I think it's Phyllis Kahn's plan to change the Outdoor Heritage Council to be a legislative-controlled council rather than a citizen-controlled council. Were you aware of that legislation?
I think citizen input is very important on these commissions. You know, the citizens have the opportunity to really go out in the field and study these projects. They go visit them, they look at them, and I think their input is very, very valuable. We might not always take all of their advice and their priorities, but I think it's very important. This is the citizens' money, and I think it's very important that we have their input. And I really stress that they stay on that commission and that we all work together. I think the legislators really need that input to make good decisions on this money.
So you're in favor of keeping it the way it is with the citizens very involved in that? Absolutely,
and I think it's vitally important that Greater Minnesota keep on track of it so that we get the portion of the legacy money that's due the Greater Minnesota and not have it stay in the metro area.
All right, and we'll get to some more questions from viewers as they come in. There are a couple of other big issues before the legislature this session. One of them that's gotten a lot of attention ever since the school shooting in Newton, Connecticut, and that is the potential for gun control legislation. And there's some various different bills out there, but I thought maybe I'd get you to talk a little bit about what you know about those bills and where do you stand on any potential new gun control legislation that could come through this session.
I am really for no gun bills. I don't think that now is the time to institute gun control, gun laws. We all seem to have this kind of knee-jerk reaction. I think it's a horrible thing that happened. But to do legislation now, when everybody's emotions are high, I don't think really gets us good legislation. So I think that we should not have any legislation this year. There's a lot of moving parts. I don't think we'll end up with good legislation when we legislate through emotion instead of clear heads. So I would like to see us just, you know, we have a big budget to get through, and we should really be concentrating on that right now.
So almost like a cooling off period and then maybe deal with gun control or some legislation.
Or some legislation later when everybody clearer heads and calmer heads prevail.
And there has been talk also about maybe some type of mental health legislation, you know, ways of keeping, not controlling the guns as much as trying to help people who need help so that something like this doesn't happen. Is there anything that you'd like to say about that?
Well, you know, right now we have a lot of gun laws in play, and we should really focus on putting those in place. We have what we call suspended files, and those are files of people that really should be on the books for when the police do background checks that are required now. And they kind of slip through the crack because an I wasn't dotted, a T wasn't crossed. And so if you take all those suspended files, people that really should be in the system already, that would help. We have a lot of things in place now, and we need to make sure we're doing those things before we pile on with more laws.
All right, we have a call from Jim in Hill City, and Jim is interested in the Lessard Outdoor Heritage Council, and his question is kind of a general question. He's just wondering, how does that council help preserve and enhance and restore the forest? And I don't know if you know the answer to that, but I'll ask it because Jim asked it.
Well, we have a lot of forestry projects that come through the Lessard Heritage Foundation, and so I think that we really in Greater Minnesota, we're always focusing on our forests and how we can best manage it. We, of course, believe that it's a renewable resource, and we know that if you manage it well, we all do well in Greater Minnesota. So,
and they're doing that right now. So
yes,
and that money is being used that way. Another big issue that's in front of the legislature, again brought up last year. There was an effort to vote on same-sex marriage on a statewide constitutional amendment. Now there is some momentum for a same-sex marriage bill that would legalize same-sex marriage. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think my district is very clear. They passed the marriage amendment by a wide margin. I think of 118 precincts, I believe 112 passed the marriage amendment. So for me, I think the message from my district is very clear.
Mm-hmm. All right. And speaking of bills, one of the things that viewers may not be aware of, and with your past legislative experience maybe you can help with, is every session hundreds of bills are heard, but many viewers may wonder where those bills come from. How do they get started?
Oh, well, they come from really a wide variety of places. We have a constituent may have a problem that they need help with, and so that's a source of bills. We have in Aiken County, we do a teleconference with the Aiken County Commissioners once a month, and they bring forward their issues, what's important to them. Maybe they need legislative help on something. Our school boards, our school districts bring forth legislation. We also, I know the dreaded word, the lobbyists, but lobbyists work for different organizations and they bring forth bills that they need help with. Right now we're working on a bill that the resort industry needs. You know, there are some tax implications that come to us from our districts, and so it's really a wide variety of places that come, you know, that bring us bills.
And are there some particular bills that you're carrying this session that you'd like to talk about that maybe the viewers would be interested in, bills that are important to you?
Well, I think I did speak about the airport. That's right. A very important thing. We did have a bonding hearing on two bills for our area, the Veterans Trail that comes up through Fort Ripley. It's a really exciting project because for the first time we're talking multimodal trails. That means a lot of partners, whereas before people weren't talking together, but now we have the bicycle folks and the snowmobiles, the ATV trails. They're all talking together because they realize there's really just one pot of money, and if we all work together, we can have a great trail system that we can all use. So that's a very exciting thing that we have a lot of different partners. Camp Ripley is really working really well with us on that. We also have the Cuyuna Trail. If you have not been mountain biking in Cuyuna, you need to go. It's a real heart thumper. It's really exciting. And so we have a bill that will help with that too.
It sounds like some good projects in the pipeline and good for the tourism economy.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of good jobs go with those bills too.
Now you serve on the Education Policy Committee, and you mentioned your focus on preparing kids for college, or if it's not college, maybe a technical degree. Are there any other significant education policy bills being heard this session by the committee that you'd like to talk about?
Well, we've had several. There's one that's actually pretty troubling, and I think that, and that's the bully bill. And last Thursday, we sent a letter to the Attorney General to have her look at the constitutionality of it, because most of all of our schools have a policy for bullying, and this really is far-reaching. And so we would really like to make sure that we are not harming our First Amendment rights in this bill.
Okay, okay. The other thing that's been getting some attention lately, and that is last session, the legislature passed the video pull tabs legislation that is supposed to fund the Viking Stadium. That's kind of had a slow startup, and there's some concern that that isn't going to be raising enough money to actually fund the Viking Stadium. What are your thoughts about that? You weren't part of the legislature that passed this legislation, but you may have to deal with it down the line.
Well, I think, what is it going to come up, 95% short? So that's not just
that would be a lot
small,
short.
Yeah, it's a lot short. I think what happened was, to begin with, there was only one vendor that was allowed to provide the machines. They came up with one that was like an iPad, and I don't know about you, but an iPad is a pretty delicate thing to have in a bar with people using and drinking and whatever. So I think a lot of folks didn't like that, that there wasn't any choice for them. Now there are vendors coming online. We are seeing more and more places bring them in. They're a different machine. So while we're short, I think we should just give it a little time. But I would like to, if we are going to lease the bonds out based on this income, I think maybe it would be a good thing to wait to see if we're going to have some momentum and we're going to get there. We're going to have online bingo come on pretty soon, and that's going to be a big piece to this. But I would really like to just hold off on letting out those bonds till we see we have a good revenue stream. Otherwise, the people in Minnesota, it's going to have to come out of the general fund.
Right, and the slow uptick on picking up these video games, video pull tabs, has been one of the issues, but it kind of remains to be seen yet whether, when it does get ramped up, how much money that could bring in. So,
well, you know, I think pull tabs is kind of a social thing. You know, people go in and everybody puts in $5, and you kind of have a social thing. And the machines are kind of very solitary. It's really a more gambling type thing. So we'll see what it does.
We talked a little bit earlier. You mentioned a bonding issue. What other bonding bill priorities are there, and what do you think? Is there going to be a very big bill this session, as far as you know?
The number that I have seen out there is about $800 million, but understand this is not a bonding year. So whether we have a bonding bill or not remains to be seen. I've always thought that bonding should be for infrastructure projects, and I'm really fine with that. You know, especially in greater Minnesota, we have a lot of cities that need help with their sewer and their water and their road infrastructures, and I think that's pretty much what bonding was meant to do, to help our cities, like I said, especially in greater Minnesota, where we have aging cities and aging infrastructure.
We do have a call from Corey and Evelyn, and Senator Ruud, I'm not sure if this will be an area that you'll know the answer to, but he is wondering, Corey is wondering, are there changes in the works to improve the workers' compensation program in Minnesota for injured workers? Is that...
Boy, that's not a purview that I know about. I'm sure it's a very important. I would believe that would come through probably taxes and state and local.
All right. We talked earlier about some of the committees you served on, including the Environment and Ag Committee. Just wondering what legislation that committee is working on this session that you might want to mention.
Well, like I said, we've been doing a lot of the bonding bills that have been coming through. And we will be seeing our budget this year. It's been interesting for me to sit on the Ag Committee. We do have a lot of Ag in District 10. Right now, one of the things that's sitting in our purview, and I don't know if we'll have a hearing on it, is the wolf hunting. And that's been very controversial. Of course, in greater Minnesota, that's a big issue. We kind of laughed when we saw the bill come through because it's all authored by folks from Brooklyn Park and Eden Prairie and the cities who I don't really think understand the issue as we know it in greater Minnesota. So we are hoping that bill will probably just stay where it is right now.
And that's another example of where Democrats and Republicans in greater Minnesota can work together on issues like that.
We understand that issue very well.
All right, well, we just have a little bit of time left, but what about the jobs? You mentioned the catch-all committee. Are there some significant economic development bills being worked on this session?
I think we'll see those come through pretty soon. One of the things that we're working at in Brainerd, that we have a wonderful program called the Bridges, and we have a manufacturing alliance who is working with the high schools and the high school superintendents and the Central Lakes College and the Staples campus and the whole business community. And we just had a wonderful fair at the college where we brought in over 150 businesses to show the students what they can do. We have really good manufacturing jobs in the area. We just need to make sure that we have trained workers for them. So that's one of the initiatives. We would like to bring that around to the rest of the state because we think it's an incredibly successful program.
Well, Senator Kerry Ruud, we really appreciate your time today and coming to Duluth to spend the afternoon with us, and we hope to see you on a future show here.
Invite me anytime. I love it. Thank you.
Sounds good. And that is all the time we have this week for Minnesota Legislative Report. Be sure to tune in again next Sunday at 5 p.m. for an update on the week's legislative session. And thanks to Senator Ruud, who came here today to during her busy schedule to help us out on what's happening at the state capitol. I'd also like to thank the volunteers who answer the phones and get your questions on the air. For the crew here at WDSE, WRPT, Public TV, I'm Greg Grell. Have a great evening.